Chapter 1: Thick Trunks. In a dark alley behind Nick's bar, I stared at the bat a tall bald guy was holding above my head. I cowered from the threat of being throttled because of my cousin's idiocy. My cousin Daniel stood next to me, trying to reason with him, claiming it was all a mistake, while another brutish-looking guy blocked our exit to the busy street at our backs. I don't know how such a fun night turned so disastrous. Please, I didn't know she was with you, man, Daniel said. At least let my cousin go. She had nothing to do with it. I don't care. I'm going to break your pretty nose and then slash your cousin's thick trunks, said the man with the bat. Thick trunks? Ooh, that hurt. I knew I didn't have stick legs like a runway model, but the brute's comment really got under my skin. My name's Stella, and even though my trunks are large, they can squeeze you like a boa constrictor, I hissed. It was bad enough I had been avoiding relationships since my breakup a year and a half ago. Getting called out by a stranger stung. I wanted to tell him how I'd been working my butt off for over a year in the gym, and even though my frame was still on the larger size, I was strong and fit. But I stayed quiet, thinking about my next move. Earlier that night Daniel called me and asked me to meet him at Nick's bar along the Sunset Strip. He said, "Stella, I can't tolerate you spending another night alone watching your favorite action-adventure movie." The movie he was talking about features the hunky actor Luke Mulligan. I could watch Luke Mulligan any night of the week. But Daniel said the drinks were on him, so instead of donning my elastic waist pajamas, I made a little effort in a black miniskirt, red silky top and black strappy heels. I know I don't have the most model-esque physique, but I've been working on my revenge body and feeling a little more confident as of late. Of course, I topped off the look with a cute black blazer. I'm not quite ready to let my arms jiggle out on the dance floor. With two thuggish guys, one with a bat and the other looking ready to tackle us, I wished I'd opted for flats instead of heels. Who was I trying to kid anyway? I wasn't ready to hook up with anyone yet. Not after what happened with Ryan. That was another thing my cousin was trying to get me to forget. For all his swagger, my cousin Daniel had good intentions. When we arrived at Nick's place earlier in the night, Daniel immediately started getting chummy with some girls at the bar, 2 blondes and a redhead to be exact. Daniel always likes the blondes. He uses me, his curvy brunette cousin, to disarm the attractive women. Usually I play along with Daniel's antics. He's helped me out as of late, getting in shape, earning a personal trainer's license and giving me one of his personal training clients so I could at least pay my share of the rent on a 2-bedroom dump I shared with my best friend. That time, however, I was getting a little bored with the Bobbsey twins and the ginger yapping in my ear about their auditions and the casting directors and who was banging who, your typical Hollywood banter. It was common of Nick's place, a cool LA hangout, to attract wannabe actresses. It's probably why Daniel chose the place. I left to go to the bathroom, and when I came back, Daniel was dancing with one of the blondes, getting quite close and personal. I didn't think much about it. That's Daniel's style. Plus, as a personal trainer, I must admit he's pretty svelte. I left them to bust a move while I got another drink at the bar. As I took another sip of my beer, I noticed a bald guy staring at my cousin, and I knew it meant trouble. When I lost sight of Daniel and the blonde in a sea of dancing drunks, I knew something was wrong. I circled the dance floor, checked the bathroom, and by that point, my feet were aching in the heels. I figured the bald guy must have been a jealous boyfriend of sorts, and I motioned for the bartender, who told me they'd left out the side door. Daniel was the unlucky bastard caught in the middle, and once I ran out, I was guilty by association. That's how I ended up in the dank alley, surrounded by garbage smell with a possessive boyfriend waving a bat above my head, and I was seething mad about his comments regarding my legs. "I swear I wasn't trying to steal your girl," Daniel kept repeating. "You should be mad at her, not me. She's not to blame. You must have seduced her," said the bald guy, waving the bat. "What do you want?" Daniel asked. "I have cash in my wallet." "How much?" the bald guy asked. Daniel threaded his hand into his pocket and pulled out his wallet and threw around $400 on the ground. It was then that I realized it had all been a setup. The girls, the bald guy watching them, all to lure my cousin outside to willing give up his cash. The bald guy motioned for his accomplice to come over and pick up the money. I couldn't let them get away with it. With the bat ready to crush my skull, I thought about what Luke Mulligan would do as Gabriel, the brawny guardian angel in my favorite movie. I might not have the brawn, but surely I had the brains I wanted to keep in my head and not spilled out with the rest of the stinky trash littering the alleyway. I guess that stank was getting to Daniel too, because suddenly he coughed and lurched, spewing vomit onto his shoes. It was just the distraction I needed. The bald guy holding the bat looked over at Daniel, and I slid like a baseball player sliding into home and swiped the bald guy's leg with my own, causing him to topple back, the bat still in his hands. I kicked him in the chin with my heels, having determined why I wore them after all. My adrenaline was racing. I felt like a badass. I was so mad at these punks and those skanks for thinking they could scam my cousin. I turned on my knees and lurched toward the bills Daniel threw on the ground, just losing out to the thug who snatched them the second before. I grabbed his legs in a bear hug, causing him to fall forward, clutching the wad. After retching, Daniel recovered and stepped over to help me to my feet, but that gave the bald guy just enough time to get his bearings and take a swipe with the bat at Daniel. No! I screamed, but it was too late. Daniel held his arms up to protect his head. Crack! The bat slammed down onto Daniel's arm. He yelled in pain. I gave the bald guy a punch in the stomach, grabbed the bat, and quickly ushered Daniel away toward the street. The other thug didn't bother messing with us after that, having already confiscated Daniel's cash. I tossed the bat once we were safely in an Uber on the way to the hospital. Hey, I'm getting the munchies. Can we stop for a slice of pizza on the way? Daniel asked.
No pizza.
Ah, fries.
No fries.
I could tell he was still drunk because it wasn't like Daniel to beg for junk food. He usually ate a clean diet, even if he did enjoy a couple of alcoholic drinks now and again. I unstrapped my shoes and held them in my hands. My bare feet dangled against the seat. I thought about how brave I'd been. Never would I have thought I could take out a 6'2" man with a bat and do it in heels. After a few minutes, Daniel asked, "How am I going to work if my arm's broken?" And he took part of my rent money. He was starting to sober up. I didn't blame Daniel. Even though he could be a player, he was always honest with girls. They just weren't always honest with him. We could both be fools when it came to love. Lord knows I was with Chapter 2, Celebrity Training. It turned Daniel had a broken arm, complete with a cast and a temporary sling. Once the alcohol wore off, a dose of painkillers kicked in and Daniel seemed relaxed about the situation. I figured I'd take him home, and then head to the local Fantastics diner to see if I could pick up a shift or two to earn back the $400 bucks Daniel lost. At 24, it wasn't where I thought I'd be in life. I went to college to be a physical therapist. 3 years in, my dad's previous leg injury relapsed. I dropped out and stayed home to help him, although not before acquiring the standard freshman 15 and a pile of student loans I couldn't pay. I started waitressing to pay the bills, all the while putting on more weight little by little. I just wanted to help people be active, and I didn't know how to transition my career. It took a bad breakup to realize I needed to help myself first. Daniel lived in a tiny one-bedroom near LAX. His place was clean and sparse, barely decorated like many bachelor pads. At 26, he was more like a brother to me, partly due to all the time my father spent with the two of us. I looked in the refrigerator and made sure there was milk and yogurt, easy essentials for eating with one arm. Daniel went to the bathroom. I didn't volunteer to help with that, instead handing him a pair of easy pull-in sweatpants, and then I followed him to his bedroom. He sat down on his navy comforter, neatly pulled up to his matching plaid pillows. It looked so enticing, I thought about lying down for a few minutes before heading out, but Daniel seemed lost in concentration, his brows knitting in disbelief as he checked his phone for the first time since the assault. Is it 8 a.m. already? The 25th? Of crap. I have a new client meeting. He stood up and started pacing around his bedroom, one arm holding the phone. So? Just cancel for today. Look, I'm sure in a few days you'll be able to do some activities. Squats, one-arm push-ups, one-arm chin-ups, you know. I laughed, watching him continuing to pace, trying to lighten the mood. No, you don't understand. He looked up from his phone. This is a new and really exclusive client. I tried to stand in his path and get him to look at me. He swerved around me, cradling his arm, not missing a stride. Just call them and explain the situation. I'm sure they can wait one more day for the training. No, you don't understand. Daniel continued to pace as I perched myself on the bed. Okay, you keep saying that. He stopped and looked at me. I nabbed a celebrity client. I don't know who. The manager, she said her name was Katie, was a little hush-hush about it. I looked at him, almost about to laugh. My cousin had a nice training business going, but nothing chic or exclusive. With the naive way he acted the night before, I wasn't sure his story wasn't part of another scam. Are you sure? I mean, maybe she was full of BS. No, she said she needed a trainer for a movie star who didn't want it to get out that they needed a trainer. She said it'd be easier to keep a secret since I'm not that well known. Trust me, I think it's legit. She looked pretty bougie. He finally stopped pacing and sat down next to me on the bed. Okay, still. No big deal. I shrugged. You can just postpone for one more day. Even a celebrity will understand. She's offering me a ton of money. Seriously, I think they'll understand. Look at me. He raised his arm and winced. I can't do it. Not today. He looked straight in my eyes. You have to do it. I looked away. Are you crazy? Daniel put his good hand on my shoulder. You've come a long way. And I need this. I need you. I'll pay you half and we'll still make out with a ton of money. Plus, I think you owe me. He smirked and nodded his head. She didn't leave a number, just an address, so I can't even cancel anyway. Just one day, please. Then we can figure something out. But I've only had one client, old Mrs. Rosa. I'm not ready for a celebrity client. You've been doing great with old Mrs. Rosa. She can do curls now with 5 pounds instead of 3. Right? We both laughed. Mrs. Rosa was 75, but feistier than people half her age. I did owe him. He was one of the few that helped pick me up after Ryan's devastation. He got me back into exercising and encouraged me to get a personal trainer's license. I needed to put my personal doubts aside and do this for him. Plus, I could use the extra money. I just really hoped this celebrity wasn't some tall waif needing to put on extra pounds. That would be a punishment crueler than overbaked brownies. Okay, what's the address? Daniel smiled and half-hugged me awkwardly with his good arm. You'll be great. Here, I'll text you. Leaving Daniel's, I was nervous. Training a celebrity instead of a 75-year-old woman who ate dinner with her cat every night was a lot to ask. I stopped briefly by my apartment so I could change into my sleek black spandex pants and a vibrant blue sporty tank top. My feet felt 10 times better in my sneakers, having finally been able to abandon the black strappy heels. On the highway, I passed a billboard for Luke Mulligan's next film, one in which, according to celebrity news sites, he gained 30 pounds in order to look more like he had a dad bod. I smiled at his smoldering gaze high in the air. Dad bod or not, he was damn fine. I popped a piece of gum in my mouth, something I tended to do when I was stressed. If only I hadn't tried to be a hero last night, then maybe Daniel's arm would be okay and he would be the one looking for the Brentwood mansion. I turned off onto a tree-lined driveway and approached a stone and metal gate with a call box to the side. I pressed the button and a muffled voice answered. Who is it? I'm Stella. I'm the personal trainer. I heard a beep and the gate swung open. As I drove up, I was amazed by the immaculate green lawn. A huge stone mansion sat at the end of the driveway. I parked in front of the 5-car garage and walked what seemed like a mile to the double front doors. The place looked like a beautiful fairy tale fortress. I could do this, I told myself. Celebrities are people too. No matter who was on the other side of the door, I could train them. Why I felt so nervous I couldn't really tell you. I took a deep breath and rang the bell. And when that door opened, I almost fainted. Chapter 3: Meeting my celebrity crush. I'm Luke. That smoldering gaze I admired up on the billboard was now staring back at me in real life. I was so surprised that Daniel's celebrity client was Luke Mulligan. The Luke Mulligan. I cracked my gum like a teenager, shocked at the revelation. I'm Stella. It took me a beat, but I wasn't that starstruck that I forgot my name. Just my manners. I cracked my gum again, unable to blink. The man I had watched for hours upon hours on screen was standing before me. The trainer. I managed to blurt out as Luke's intense chocolate eyes stared back at me. He looked at me quizzically. The sound of heels clacking on the marble floor broke up my mesmerizing moment. A smartly dressed middle-aged woman with a smooth bob of honey-colored hair approached the door. I thought you hired a male trainer, Katie? Luke asked, turning toward her. I did. Who are you? She scooched in front of Luke in the doorway. I remembered Daniel telling me about Katie approaching him, wanting to keep everything confidential. Yeah, about that, I said. My cousin Daniel was the one you hired, but he had a little accident. I'm sure he'll be fine in a day or two. He sent me in his place. She sniffed. Did he tell anyone else about this? Who else is going to show up at the door?
No. I'm sorry, Luke.
I turned to look at him again. Daniel didn't even know you were the client. He just didn't want to miss out on this great opportunity. Are you even licensed? Katie asked, putting her hands on her hips in a take-charge posture. Yes. I didn't want to provide any more details, like how I'd only had my license for a few months and how my only client so far was old Mrs. Rosa. I reminded myself to stay confident so I didn't lose this client for Daniel, and so I could continue to stay in Luke's presence. Luke looked me over and said, "Let's give it a try," as he stepped aside so I could enter. Okay, I'll just be in the office for a while. Let me know how everything goes, Katie said as she clacked away toward a room off the entryway. Inside, the place looked like a modern palace with a white and gray marble floor. Plenty of natural light coming in through large windows and a stately staircase set back from the entrance. The interior seemed to glow with the morning light as Luke led me down a hall and into a workout studio. As we walked, I noticed Luke's height and breadth. He was a large guy, not a giant but bigger than I expected, his butt round and tight with a broad back and strong shoulders. I knew Luke was more muscular than your average man, but seeing him up close made me quiver at his strength. I could tell he had gained a few pounds, his love handles a little droopy in his gray t-shirt. Nevertheless, it was no dad bod. It was a sexy, hulking frame, and I couldn't believe I had the chance to be so close to him. When we arrived at the studio, he asked, "Okay, boss, what should we do first?" I looked around and saw enough weights and gym equipment to rival a professional gym. Daniel would love it. Well, what I usually do with my clients is ask them about their goals. So what is it that you want to work on? I tried to look Luke in the eyes, willing myself to be professional. The first step of which was to swallow my gum. I just need to lose a few pounds. I gained some weight from my last role. He tapped his belly, indicating the extra flab on his stomach. Sure, I said, nodding my head. But anything in particular? Any special stunts you need to prepare for? No, he immediately shook his head, barely letting me finish. Something there hit a chord, but being my celebrity crush, I didn't want to push it. I can help you, I said, nodding, trying to convince myself as much as Luke that I was up for the job. His eyes staring back at me were unsettling. Let's see about that, he smirked. I want to see if you really have what it takes to be a trainer. You know I wanted a guy trainer to push me, try to keep up with me. He walked over to a rack of weights and picked up 2 50-pound dumbbells which he pushed straight over his head. I get that, I said, amazed and turned on by his strength. He put the weights down and walked over to me. I'm game. I stared back at him. How about a push-up contest? For every 2 that I do, you do 1. You're on. I dropped onto the black foam mat, barely thinking about what I just agreed to. I wanted to prove to Luke I could do it. Push-ups weren't my forte, but I could hold me own. Luke dropped to the mat too, directly facing me. As he dropped his chest to the floor, I dropped mine. For the first few reps I was keeping pace. Every other push-up Luke did, I did 1 too. At first I kept my gaze on the mat, but pretty soon I looked up to see Luke's forehead only a few inches from my own, a bead of sweat starting to form on his brow. Around rep 15, Luke's 30, I started to feel my shirt drooping from my chest, wondering how much of a view he was getting. Thank God I had worn a flattering workout bra. I tried to stay focused. Then my shoulders started to burn and my mind wandered to thinking about what a great story this was. If nothing else, I could tell Daniel and my best friend Michelle about my push-up contest with Luke Mulligan, the movie star. I started to fall behind. Luke was around rep 50 and I was struggling to keep the pace. He really was one strong dude. He lifted his gaze and I saw him smirk. I didn't want to give up just yet. I pushed for 2 more reps, pausing at the top to see if he really was trying to catch a glance down my shirt. But I couldn't hold it anymore and collapsed on the mat. You win, I said. He pushed out a few more, then sat on his knees. Not bad, but you see why I need a man? Maybe I can't do push-ups or lift 50 pounds over my head, but I have other talents. I got to my knees too. Oh yeah? Like what? He looked doubtful. You're not slim enough to be a runner. You're not tall enough to be able to jump high. I can tell you're strong, but that's one area I got covered. Basically, Luke just sized me up and it didn't feel good. He was right. What could I offer him? Motivation. I asked. Motivation, he repeated. I have a $20 million movie contract for that. Look, it was fun, but I need to get serious. I'm sure you'll do a great job with some other clients. So basically, you were never really into giving me a chance, were you? I smiled, trying to not seem upset that he had been toying with me. As a trainer, no. But you're cute. So I thought we could have some fun. Luke Mulligan called me cute. Repeat. Luke Mulligan called me cute. Nothing else could ruin my day after that. Goo. I bet he had been looking at my boobs during those push-ups. I tried to recover from that comment with the most dignity I could muster. While I didn't want to leave, I wanted to make sure I stayed in Luke's good graces, at least for Daniel's sake. I'm sure my cousin can challenge you then, I said. Sure, it was nice meeting you, Stella. He stood up and offered his hand. I reached out my hand to shake his. His handshake was forceful. Yet even with our sweaty palms touching together, it felt comfortable like a soft blanket. Yeah, he smiled. I'll show you out. He gently pushed me ahead as I walked down the hall. I felt like a failure. It was fun meeting Luke in person, fun while it lasted. I didn't want to seem like a crazed fan asking for an autograph or a selfie. I tried to think of a way to stay in Luke's presence a bit longer, just a moment or 2. And I hoped I hadn't ruined Daniel's chances. He needed this job. While I would have loved the extra money to pay my debts, he needed it just as bad. When we neared the entryway, Luke paused behind me. Wait here. I'll get you some water. I was standing in the hallway, close to the office door in which Katie had disappeared earlier. As I waited for Luke, I heard Katie talking on the phone. Yes, he'll be ready in 2 months. Don't worry. We'll find someone to teach him to swim. He can do the water scenes. There was a pause. My mind raced. Swim. That was Luke's secret? He couldn't swim? Katie continued. Yes, I know how much money you've already put into the project. Those other trainers just weren't up for the job. He'll be able to swim in 2 months, I promise you. She hung up the phone. I nearly jumped up and down with excitement. Ever since I was a little girl, my dad took Daniel and me to the pool. He'd throw us around and we'd swim back to the wall. Then we joined the swim team and later junior lifeguards at the beach. We were around water all the time. If there was one thing Daniel could do, it was train someone to swim. Except he couldn't. The broken arm. The cast. It would have to be me. Chapter 4, the whole pie. I didn't wait for Luke to return with the water. I figured I needed to get out of there and tell Daniel what I heard, form a plan. I knew he'd be bummed about missing out on the opportunity to train Luke, but if I could find a way to convince Luke I could teach him to swim, maybe I had a chance. First, I needed to tell my roommate, Michelle, about my surprise meeting. I texted her to meet me at our favorite bakery. After the swing of emotions I'd felt that day, I needed a sugary treat. I slid in a booth across from Michelle with my tea and a slice of apple pie. Michelle yawned, having stayed up late studying for the LSATs. After working as a paralegal for a few years, she realized she was just as smart as most of the lawyers she worked with and decided to get a law degree herself. You'll never guess what happened to me, I said as Michelle took a bite of her cheese Danish. She was thin with curly brown hair and seemed to never worry about calories.
I met Luke Mulligan.
I gave her a smug smile. What? She said, looking at me shocked. Yep, I nodded. Daniel was supposed to train him. It's supposed to be a secret so the gossip rags don't find out, I whispered for effect. Then how did you meet him? Well, Daniel's arm is in a cast. Let's just say it was a setup with some tramp and 2 thugs who stole Daniel's money and broke his arm. But don't worry, I was like a gladiator. Well, as much of a gladiator as I could be in those strappy black heels I have. I took a bite of pie. Oh, I like those heels. They're so cute. Michelle nodded her head in understanding. So Daniel sent me to train Luke, and I messed it all up. I told Michelle all about meeting Luke, his sexy booty, and how he basically fired me. When I got to the part about overhearing Katie, Michelle grabbed my arm, nearly spilling my tea on the table. You have to train him. You can swim better than anyone I know. You're practically a fish. I prefer mermaid. I stroked my hair in a motion of glamour. But I don't have his number, he just dismissed me, and I'll never see him again, I added. We batted around some ideas such as sending him a video of me in a pool. No, way too creepy. Or Michelle's best idea, me breaking into his house and skinny dipping.
Definitely no.
Literally all our ideas sucked. Nothing was going to work, including me bumping into him at the beach. In all the celebrity news articles I read about Luke, not once had he visited the beach. I did know, however, that he belonged to a private country club where he liked to golf. That didn't seem to help though. I knew they had super tight security, and I'd never be able to get in without a membership. I slipped out from the table to go to the beverage area to refill my tea. On my way, I noticed a table with some trash on it, which I picked up and put in the trash can. A man I didn't know came and asked if I could refill his coffee. Sorry, I don't work here, I said. Oh, sorry. I didn't notice. Your shirt kind of looks like their uniform. I looked at the girl behind the cash register. She wore a black shirt embroidered with an emblem for the bakery that was not too dissimilar to the Nike swoosh on my black workout shirt. I scurried back to the table with Michelle. Hey, where's your tea? She asked. Forget the tea. Remember my dilemma. Need money to pay off my student debt and get those collection agents off my back, plus my desire to work with the famously sexy Luke Mulligan at the same time. Yep. I need a uniform. What uniform? One for the club Luke belongs to. I explained how the man mistaking me for an employee got me thinking about how I just might be able to sneak into Luke's country club if I looked like I worked there. It seemed like a solid plan because the next day was Sunday, a prime golfing day for sure. According to Talk of the Town magazine, Luke liked to unwind from a busy week with a round of golf on the day of rest. So far, my encyclopedic knowledge of Luke Mulligan appeared to be coming in handy. I knew a girl Daniel had dated who worked at Luke's club as a cocktail waitress and complained about serving drinks to rich snobs who tipped well, but rarely said thank you. She talked about how all the golfers would reconvene poolside for cigars and drinks. Luke was probably one of them. Although, I'm sure my Luke always thanked his waitresses. Wear your bathing suit underneath and when you see Luke, dive in and show him your stuff, Michelle suggested. I don't think it'll be that easy. I mean, first of all, do I really want Luke Mulligan to see me in a bathing suit? Stella, come on. You look great. Can you just get over it already? Put what happened with Ryan in the past. Michelle knew how sensitive I became about my body after Ryan. Not only was my self-esteem bruised after what Ryan did, so was my wallet. Little did I know he was running up charges on my credit card behind my back too. That and my student loans left me in a terrible financial hole, one I was slowly trying to dig myself out of. Luke did call me cute. He what? Michelle grabbed the corners of the table and looked in my eyes to see if I was pulling her chain. The man of your dreams, the hunky man you've watched for hours and hours in your favorite movie. The man you read every bit of tabloid gossip about called you cute? Well, yeah. I smiled, brightening from the inside out at the thought of Luke and his comment. But it was only after he called me not slim enough to be a runner. Who wants to be a stick figure with no boobs anyway? There is no way he doesn't want to see you again. Just no way. Michelle was convinced. How am I going to get a uniform though? Go see Daniel. He's not the sharpest, but sometimes his brain works differently or something and he might be able to help you with this crazy idea, she suggested. Michelle made me believe our plan could actually work. If there was some way I could find a uniform, I'd be set. Now that I had experienced a slice of Luke Mulligan, I wanted the whole Chapter 5, a uniform plan. I called Daniel, who claimed he couldn't sleep and had headed over to the gym to work. Daniel was a gym rat who couldn't stay away. I drove over to Sunset Fitness Club, a small well-maintained gym that let Daniel set up a small office in an unused closet for a small fee. The gym employed Daniel as a trainer, plus Daniel had some outside clients on the side. It was an arrangement where Daniel could earn a steady, if small, paycheck while earning more cash from the old Mrs. Roses of the world who would feel out of place at a commercial gym. I breezed through the door, assaulted by the stinky sock smell so common in sweaty environments, waving to the regulars there who knew me, and met Daniel in his office. So, he asked. So? I asked back. How did it go? I told him the story, leaving out the part where Luke said I wasn't slim, and heightening the part where he called me cute. Daniel seemed pretty stoked that Luke wanted a challenge. And then I got to the part where I overheard Katie saying Luke needed to learn how to swim. Daniel's smile flipped, and he pounded his fist on the table. Well, that's it then. I lost the best paying client I've ever had. The client who could have really helped me get out of this gym locker and launch my own legit training business. I know. It's a bummer. I feel so bad about your arm, I said, noticing how the cast came up past his elbow, ending just before the tattoo of a dragon Daniel had near his bicep. Will you stop saying that? If you hadn't gone all kung fu on that guy, they might have stolen my money and beat me up anyway. Daniel looked at me steadily. I need to thank you, Stella. I looked uncomfortable. Usually my cousin was the one I had fun with. We didn't often talk about our feelings. Now it was my turn to be honest with him. Daniel, I was thinking. Actually, talking with Michelle. I shifted my weight from one foot to the other. And we thought about coming up with a plan to prove to Luke that I can do it. I can teach him how to swim. I mean, you could. Your father did a great job teaching us. But how are you going to change Luke's mind? From what you said, he's interested in you. He looked me up and down, but not interested in you training him. Yeah, I know, but I think I need to show him. Will you help? What do I have to do? Daniel asked. I told him about what I knew concerning Luke, about the country club. When I mentioned the girl we knew who used to work there, Daniel's eyes brightened. He told me how he used to hook up with her, sometimes after her shift at the country club. He described the uniform she wore, consisting of a red polo shirt and black pants. I figured it would be easy enough to find a similar outfit to buy at the mall. All I needed was a way to print the emblem, which according to the internet, looked kind of like an alligator. Looking at Daniel's dragon tat, I found my answer. Do you think you could get the guy who did that to draw an alligator on a shirt? I pointed to Daniel's tattoo. Mickey? Sure. He'll do anything for a little cash. Michelle accompanied me to the mall where I found the clothes, and then we met Daniel at the tattoo parlor. I brought a printout of the country club's crest from their website. Daniel made a deal with his tattoo artist to draw the crest on the shirt for $50. We were low on funds, but I convinced Daniel the plan would work. Plus, the tattoo artist even threw in a little doodle on Daniel's cast for free. I hope you know what you're doing, Stella, Daniel said while turning his head to watch a tall blonde walk by with a new tramp stamp. I'm not sure, I said, holding the shirt, careful not to smudge the design. She's sure, Michelle chimed in. She'll be great. I thought about the last time Michelle and Daniel were together helping me. It was just after I'd found out what Ryan did. Then to make matters worse, I tried to order pizza for the three of us only to learn my credit card was maxed out. All because Ryan stole from me both my dignity and my money. They've been trying to help me get back both ever since. It'll work, Michelle said as we walked out of the tattoo parlor. She always sounded so confident. I'm taking that $50 bucks out of your share, Daniel said. Naturally, I replied as I noticed Daniel smiling at a brunette walking by. I figured I only needed about half of their confidence in order to pull off the plan. Then I could pay off more of my debt, help Daniel with his business and be able to hang out with one of the dreamiest movie stars on the planet. It seemed easy, right? So why did I have a hollow feeling in the pit of my stomach? Getting the fake uniform was the simple part. The hard part would be finishing the job and winning Luke's trust. I ran out so abruptly, why would he ever want to see me again? And could I really show him that I had what it takes in the pool? He'd probably just think I looked like a drowned rat. So far the plan was going as expected until it wasn't. Chapter 6, Big Splash. I didn't sleep well, my mind racing with thoughts about the plan and how it was now on my shoulders to get Luke back as a client. I promised Daniel we could share the money. He had nabbed Luke as a client in the first place and had helped procure the needed uniform. Plus, he was the one who got me started as a trainer in the first place. I wasn't sure if I wanted Luke as a client because it was Luke Mulligan, the man of my dreams, or because I too could use the extra money. Either way, I felt nervous about seeing Luke again. That morning Michelle helped me get ready, tucking my hair back in a bun like many waitresses do. Do I look like a bona fide country club employee? I said, twirling around in the uniform. You look fine. Real legit, Michelle said. It makes me look fat. I pulled at the shirt to loosen it a bit. Come on. You look fine. No one looks good in those things. She fixed my collar. I took one last look in the mirror by our apartment door, turned to her, took a deep breath and said, I'm off. Go get him, Tiger, she called after me. Urgh. I laughed as she made a gesture clawing her hand. Michelle knew how to put me at ease. Once I arrived at the country club, I parked and waited to see where other employees entered and followed in a teenage boy clad in the same uniform. The door led into a locker room. It wasn't hard to find the other waitresses, and I grabbed a tray and followed them out to the pool. While I was worried someone might notice my imposter uniform, no one seemed to glance my way. A sunny day with no clouds in the sky and no breeze. I knew there would be plenty of people by the pool before long. I thought it might be a while until Luke showed up, so somehow I'd have to act like I belonged. Luckily, the other waitresses were too busy flirting with the poolside bartender to notice me picking up trash behind the bushes and putting out deck chairs like one of the teenage employees. Before long, people started congregating poolside. First to arrive were the wealthy wives in their sun hats and bikinis, drinking cucumber water. Then a few of the husbands, with their hairy backs and scorched faces from too much sun. Finally, some younger guys started to trickle onto the deck, setting up around some tables by the shallow end of the pool. It started to get so busy, one guy in a Hawaiian shirt, unable to get another waitress' attention, flagged me down. Miss Hay, he said quite loudly, waving his arm. I decided I should wait on him rather than make a scene. I had been trying to avoid actually working as a waitress, but I looked the part, so it seemed I had to act it too. What can I get you? I said. A screwdriver and my wife here will have a mimosa. Sure. I gave him my warmest smile and turned to walk away. His wife, in a large sun hat, looked like a mannequin lying on a nearby chaise lounge. Now I'd have to interact with the bartender, who would probably know I was a fake, I thought. I followed what the other girls were doing and put in my order for the drinks. It was getting so busy no one noticed me. Before I brought the drinks back to the guy in the Hawaiian shirt, I saw Luke saunter in. He looked amazing in shorts and a pale blue polo shirt. The sun brightened his chocolate eyes that crinkled a little when he laughed at his buddy's joke. He sat down with three other guys his age by a table near the shallow end. I knew I needed to start the next phase of the plan, but first I decided to give the man and his wife their drinks. They were sitting almost directly on the opposite side of the pool as Luke, near the deep end. I figured I'd give them their drinks, hop behind a bush to take off the uniform since I was wearing my bathing suit underneath, and then try and get Luke's attention before I performed a perfect swan dive into the pool and swam a few laps. Of course, with my luck, the plan didn't go as expected. Once I got back to the man and his wife, the man appeared agitated. What took you so long? Sorry. It's busy. I indicated the line at the bar. Do you know who I am? He asked. Of course I didn't, but what could I say? Yes, sir. I know you are very important. I am so sorry. He took a sip of his drink and then sat back for a minute. I thought it was going to be fine, but just then he received a phone call on his cell. He took another sip and listened for a second or two. then jumped up from his chair, accidentally knocking over his drink. He started yelling into his phone, becoming more irate as another worker came over to help me clean up the mess. His wife continued to lie motionless on the chaise, as if someone had Botoxed her whole body. Some people around the pool started to glance over as the man in the Hawaiian shirt yelled even louder into the phone. I turned around with the empty drink tray in my hand to walk back towards the bar when the man accidentally bumped me out of the way, clearly more interested in his conversation than human decency. I tried to catch my footing. Unfortunately, I was working with 2 left feet that day. I remember seeing the blue water shimmering in the sun and hoping I could avoid it. I wasn't so lucky. With a big splash, I dropped the tray and landed in the pool, but first, I tried to stay submerged for as long as I could, not wanting to face the embarrassment. I thought about the tea parties I used to have underwater when I was a kid. I wish those were real, and I could sit there drinking tea and eating pastries. I looked up at the surface, the bubbles slowly escaping my nose and mouth. It was so quiet underwater. So peaceful. On the surface, I was going to have to deal with what went wrong. Underwater, I could escape my insecurities, my problems, my responsibilities. But I could only hold my breath for so long. It was time to come up and face Luke. I needed a backup plan. Chapter 7. Will he or won't he? I surfaced and started treading water, stunned. Everyone around the pool, including the lifeguard, looked at me to see what had happened. The lifeguard even blew his whistle and made a move to save me. I'm fine, I said, swishing my arms and legs beneath the surface to keep my head up. Everyone kept staring as I kept treading, my hair having unraveled from the bun, now hung unnaturally plastered to my face. No one seemed to move. Silently, they watched to see how the show was going to end. I felt like a dolphin at SeaWorld with everyone waiting for the next trick. I noticed Luke watching too, and considered I needed to do something now that I had his attention. I buried my head in the water, and swam all the way down to the shallow end wearing the fake country club uniform that now felt like a boulder weighing me down. Even with the added drag, it wasn't that hard. I was strong. I could swim with a boulder. Once I reached the shallow end, I did a flip turn and splashed a little water with my feet at Luke and his friends just to show off a little more. I stood up in the shallow end, the water reaching my waist, and some people even clapped. It wasn't the elegant entrance I had planned, but it would have to do. Luke smiled at me and I knew he recognized me. I treaded over to the ladder to get out when I lost sight of him. I climbed out and started to wring the water from the end of the shirt, knowing I looked more like a drowned rat than the graceful water ballerina I wanted to portray. I was further disappointed that Luke seemed to have disappeared. The bystanders all seemed to go back to their conversations, giving me little notice now that I was out of the pool. As I dumped out the water from the black sneakers I had on, I felt a tap on my shoulder. Here's a towel. I knew that smooth, sexy voice and turned around to find Luke handing me one of the club's pool towels. You made quite a splash. I aim to please, I said and took a little bow. When I said I was getting water the other day, I meant a glass, not this. He pointed to the pool. I know, I said. Sorry about running out the other day. Why are you here? I know you don't work here. I squeezed the excess water out of my hair with the towel. It was truth-spilling time and I had to reveal the real reason I was there. I came here to show you I can swim, I said. I can see that, he said, indicating my wet clothes. I didn't mean to do that, I mean fall in fully clothed. See? I lifted up my shirt a little to reveal my bathing suit underneath. I still don't get it, Luke said with a confused expression on his face. Up until that point we were bantering and Luke looked amused if a little confused. I had to make him understand. I could have swum 50 laps with these clothes on. That's how good of a swimmer I am. I know I can't keep up with you in push-ups, but I can teach you to swim. I looked up at him, squinting into the sun. A shadow cast over his face as he looked around to see if anyone heard us. It was as if he suddenly wanted to jump in a cave and hide. Let's talk about this somewhere else. Why don't you get changed and meet me in the restaurant? I nodded. Any excuse to see more of Luke was fine with me. Forget the fact that I didn't have any other clothes because this wasn't how this show was supposed to go down. Nevertheless, I'd have to find a way. I needed to convince Luke. I headed back to the locker room where I first came in. After looking in a few lockers, one which included a jockstrap and 3 smelly mismatched men's socks, I finally located a duffel bag with women's clothes inside. I finished drying myself off and put on the top. It was a pink halter top that made my breasts swell at the top, along with a flowery high-waisted ruffled miniskirt. Not my style, but it would have to do. I found a sweater in another locker and tied it around my waist because it was a size too small, and looked better covering the area the pink halter did not. I slicked my hair back and walked to the restaurant in a pair of cheap flip-flops, I found in the trash can that had gum stuck to the bottom. Luke sat at a table by the row of large windows, and I rushed over to join him, my head down. "Hey, Speedy Gonzalez. You're not in a race. Take your time," he said. "I look silly in this. I didn't have any other clothes," I whispered. "You look fine." He glanced down at my breasts and gave a sly smile. "All right, anyway," I smiled, still uncomfortable in the too small clothes. "You got my attention. Now spill. How did you know about the swimming thing? How much do you know?" He sat back and folded his arms. "I heard Katie talking. You need to know how to swim for your next movie." "So you were eavesdropping?" He sat forward, looking at my reaction.
No.
"I was waiting for you. Where'd you go for water anyway, the Nile?" He laughed. "You didn't wait too long, and when I got back you were gone." "Like I said before, I'm sorry about that," I said. "I was waiting like I said, and I heard Katie on the phone. She talks pretty forcefully, you know." "I guess." He took a drink of water from a glass containing a slice of lemon and cucumber. "Look, my cousin and I really need this gig. That's why I came to find you here today. Landing a client like you could really help his business. And I'm a little strapped for cash myself." "Oh, so that's the reason." Luke said it as if he had just been slapped in the face. "Well, yeah. Why?" I asked. He shrugged and averted my gaze. "Oh, you thought." I pointed to him and then myself. Just then I realized that Luke thought I was here because I liked him, which of course I did. However, I wasn't ready to reveal my true Luke Mulligan crazed fan identity. I mean, who wouldn't have been attracted to Luke Mulligan, the handsome hunk staring at me from across the table? But he didn't need to know that. Not yet. Not now. I mean, sure, you're Luke Mulligan, the great action hero. And you've got a great body, needs some work before your next movie, like you said, I added. But no. I didn't think. "Well, Stella," he cut me off, "I think you've made yourself clear." Luke looked upset. I'm pretty sure I hurt his ego. He couldn't have been interested in me anyway, right? Luke Mulligan hitting on me? That couldn't be. I considered he was probably one of those stars whose popularity had gone to their head, and they think everyone wants to sleep with them. Still, I needed to salvage the conversation in order to get Luke to keep me as his trainer. It was the only reason I could fathom that he would want to keep me around. Plus I owed Daniel. "Please, Luke. I think we could work well together. Of course I think you're attractive, but I'm here about the job. I don't want to seem like a stalker. You've seen the lengths I'll go to for a client." I grinned. "It would mean a lot to me and my cousin," I added, "if you rehired me." I sat back and waited for Luke's answer. It was as if I was waiting for the final rose on The Bachelor. Pick me. Choose me. Nervous butterflies flitted in my stomach. Would Luke let me train him? Let me see him in a bathing suit, his muscles rippling with beads of water? Let me look into his warm brown eyes as I told him to do another set of bicep curls? Let me. There was so much I dreamed about with Luke, and it all hinged on his next answer. Chapter 8. Let's get physical. I sat biting my bottom lip in anticipation of Luke's answer. "You can clearly swim, and I need some work in that department," Luke said. "Sure," I said. What he didn't know is that I would have promised him the moon if it meant I could see more of him. "Ok, Stella. Come to my place tomorrow. I'm not ready to get in the pool quite yet, so let's start with some weight training." "Yep." "Okowo." I nodded. "And make sure to bring an extra set of clothes. You never know what's going to happen." He laughed, looking at my inappropriately sized getup. I smiled as he took one last sip from his glass, stood up and walked out of the restaurant, humming a tune. I could barely believe what just happened. It worked. I was going to be Luke Mulligan's trainer. I went back to the locker room and changed, wrapping one of the standard white country club towels around my waist. Still keeping my bathing suit and the gummed-up flip-flops on, I walked to my car. I sat in my hot Honda Civic that I'd had for 6 years with barely working air conditioning. As I texted Daniel and Michelle, they both sent wildly inappropriate emojis celebrating our victory. I felt happier than I had in months. When I arrived at Luke's mansion the following morning, instead of Luke answering the door, Lyle let me in. Lyle was a tall, thin black male dressed in a loud pink and purple plaid shirt and black pants that were well tailored to his skinny frame. A pair of dark-rimmed glasses rounded out his look. "Who are you, honey?" Lyle said with a hint of a southern twang when he opened the door and saw me standing in front of him. "I'm Stella." I reached out my hand for a handshake, to which Lyle sneered and shook his head. "I don't shake. I don't do germs. I'm here to train Luke." Lyle's face brightened. "Oh good. He needs to lose some of those pounds. The pants just aren't sitting right on his crotch anymore." Lyle rubbed his hands on the area between his thighs to indicate what he meant. I'm his stylist if you haven't figured that out yet. Oh, okay. I nodded. Nice to meet you. Lyle swiped through his phone as if he was already bored of our conversation. I waited by the door, trying to think of something more to say to Lyle when Luke walked in wearing a pair of navy pants and a white button-down with a small floral pattern. No. Lyle clucked as he circled Luke. This isn't the right pattern. I hate these colors. Hate them. Luke looked my way. I see you've met Lyle? Yes. I smiled knowingly. Lyle wasn't entirely incorrect. The outfit wasn't right for Luke, yet he managed to look dreamy all the same with his jovial smile lighting up his face. Take it off, he said to Luke, throwing his hands up. I can't stand looking at it anymore. He turned his head away and went back to swiping his phone. Luke scampered over to the entryway where a medium brown box Saturday. I think this is the new tent I ordered. He looked like a little boy at Christmas, so cute and exuberant. He carried the box over to a small table and ripped it open with brute force. He had so much strength in his hands. Reaching in, he pulled out a large green bag, smiling. I don't know why when he has all this. Lyle motioned to the room all around us. He insists on roughing it, Lyle said. I like camping, being in the great outdoors, Luke said. Lyle here doesn't like to get dirty. Dirt and this skin don't mix. Lyle grimaced, pointing to his face. I found it a turn-on that Luke liked to camp, proving he was more down to earth than I realized.
Ok, darling.
Make sure she has you doing some crunches. We don't need any more rise in that dough ball you've got forming there, Lyle said, tapping Luke's belly and walked toward the door. Luke smiled at me. Nice to see you dry. Yes, and in better fitting clothes. I borrowed one of Michelle's workout tops to go with my black sport leggings. Usually I wore old t-shirts to work out, but I knew I had to up my game with Luke. I'll go change and meet you in the gym. Just down the hall. I nodded and started walking there, my gym bag slung around my shoulder. Once I put my bag down, I started warming up. Luke walked in looking as delicious as usual in a pair of basketball shorts and a tank top. He started copying my movements, jumps and squats, lunges to the left and the right. What are we doing today, boss? He asked as he put on some workout jams, bopping along to the music, periodically singing a line or two. I thought it was cute how he wasn't afraid to sing and groove with a virtual stranger. I thought we'd start with some weightlifting exercises, some compound movements that involve the core. He chuckled. You don't have to listen to Lyle, you know. I can lose the dough ball just fine. I know, I said. This will help in the water too. You need a strong core to swim. You must have abs of steel then. I smirked. I started by showing him a windmill move with weights and moved on to squatting and push press. Luke lifted a good bit heavier than me, but got tired after only a few reps. The sweat soaked through his tank top and he looked glossy as if his arms were screaming for me to lick them dry. I kept moving, taking little rests before showing him the next exercise. Together we pushed and pulled, squatted and lunged. Luke started looking more fatigued, his breath more rapid than my own. He suggested we take a water break. I obliged, grabbing my water bottle from my bag. I couldn't take my eyes off of Luke, the way he tossed his head back slightly when he took a sip from his water bottle. I tried not to stare, but I started thinking about how hard it was going to be to refrain from jumping Luke's bones when he laid on the bench to bench press. Even his sweat smell was attractive, a little musky, but otherwise manly, like the scent of the deep woods. His panting made me think of sex scenes in rated movies, and I imagined the two of us in bed together. Stella, he said, breaking me out of my trance. Another set? Yep. Another set. I nodded and walked back to the weights, fixing my gaze on the floor instead of Luke. I think it's cool you're into camping. I tried to think of the least sexy thing to say. Yeah, I like to get away now and again, where things are just simpler. You camp? He asked, heaving a weight above his head. No, I bent down to pick up a dumbbell. You prefer hotels? He nodded in assurance. He had no idea. I hadn't been on a proper vacation or stayed in a hotel for years. My parents couldn't afford it. I shook my head. We didn't go on many vacations. Instead, we went to the beach since it's close by. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to assume. He squatted and pressed the weight. No, it's okay. I think I'd like to go camping sometime. I'd certainly love to get away from the city for a little. I rode the weight. Camping helps me clear my mind. I know how you feel, going to the beach does that for me. When we'd finished, both panting and sweating by this point, we both wiped our foreheads with a towel. I noticed Luke tired more quickly than me. It was clear he needed to work on his endurance. I'm sorry, he breathed. I ever doubted you. He took another sip of water between breaths. That's all right, I said. You're tough, Stella. Did I mention I loved the way he said my name? It rolled off his lips like a soft kiss. Then he grabbed my bicep and felt my muscle. The calluses along the top of his palm due to weightlifting tickled my arm and I giggled. It felt slightly arousing and I'm sure I blushed. I started to think maybe Luke wasn't just flirting with me to stroke his ego. Maybe he actually liked me, found me attractive even. I mean, cute is something reserved for bunny rabbits or kittens. I take it, but being so close to him made me want to take cute up a notch to sexy or hot. Needless to say, for a split second, I actually thought about the possibility a movie star who probably had women throwing their panties at him left and right might actually consider me attractive. He was not only strong but seemed genuine as well. I forgot about all my baggage, the self-loathing I still harbored about my body, partly due to Ryan, and considered Luke might be interested in a romantic relationship with me. He stepped back and flicked my butt with his towel. Good workout, boss. You're a beast. I stood still like a statue analyzing those words. That was buddy talk, not what I wanted to hear unless he was talking about me being a beast in bed. Let's just keep this professional, he added. And my heart sank. Chapter 9. A leg up. Annoyed by Luke's comment, I quickly tried to save face. Sure. Yeah. Professional, I said. I'll be here tomorrow at 6 for an early morning run. We should work on your stamina. Sure, boss, he said and walked away. All the way home I replayed our conversations, the looks Luke gave me. Where did I go wrong? Did I misread his cues? I couldn't be sure. Something made Luke pull back. When I told Michelle about it, she insisted I lay a big wet one on Luke when he wasn't prepared. I told her that was a little too bold for me. I reminded her that I needed the job so I could pay my share of the rent, not to mention my student loans, and she relented. I vowed to keep it professional so Daniel and I could profit. It would be hard to look and not touch though. Luke was just so smoking hot. Yet, I'd have to restrain myself in order to get out of debt. That's partly why I suggested running for our next workout. Most people looked like crazed zombies when they went running. I might not be slim enough to be a fast runner like Luke said, but I have endurance. I was looking forward to putting him through the paces. I gulped down an energy drink on the way to Luke's the next morning. I wanted to be fueled and ready to go, kind of hoping Luke was the type who slept in and needed a slow start. I was disappointed. Before I could even ring the bell, Luke bolted out the door in a jog, heading down the driveway singing a tune. Where we going, boss? He asked as he continued to jog ahead of me. I sprinted after him, not wanting him to get the best of me. I don't really know the area, but I thought we'd start with a quick 2-miler and then work on some hills, I said. Sure thing, he responded and continued to run ahead. I followed him along the streets of Brentwood, the sun just starting to burn off the morning LA haze. Tall palm trees gently swayed in the streets. I could see the mountains in the distance becoming a tiny bit closer with each step. We jogged past a ginormous Spanish-style estate, and then rounded the corner amidst a massive glass and steel home with its own basketball court. LA could be so beautiful for the people who could afford it. I continued to trail Luke, taking in the sights, both admiring the architecture and becoming extremely jaded about my own financial predicament. I'd grown up nearby, just south of Brentwood in a working-class community. My parents struggled a bit, but we always had food on the table. When my dad injured his leg and lost his job, he had to use the money he saved for my college to pay the bills. I nursed his leg, tried to get him to do different exercises. I read up on treatments. Little by little his leg improved, and he went back to work. That's what made me want to study physical therapy. But when he re-injured the leg, I dropped out to help him. My dream wasn't to live in Brentwood and drive a Bentley, although I couldn't help feeling a little dissatisfied that I'd given up a chance at a lucrative career, and was just now working my way up to financial stability. Since training with Daniel, I'd started to feel better about my body and found a job I liked. Even if I still wasn't rich enough to afford a car with working air conditioning, I liked the challenge of helping others with their physical goals. Enough that I found myself in a race with a very sexy movie star. As I ran by a driveway with both a red and blue Jaguar parked in the driveway, I picked up the pace. We'd run about 1.5 miles and Luke started losing steam. He began to huff a bit on the next hill, and I ran by his side, encouraging him to keep going. Just take it a little easier here. You're strong and fast, but we need to work on your endurance, I said as Luke looked at me, clearly out of breath. We ran alongside each other stride for stride about 1/2 mile. He kept pace with me for a few more strides before gaining a second wind and trying to pull ahead. We reached a steep hill, and he tried to sprint faster, probably wanting to prove he could beat me up the hill. Keep it slow and steady, I yelled. Luke didn't listen. He gained steam as he tried to sprint faster up the hill, leaving me behind. A few yards ahead of me, I heard him cry out in pain and saw him grab his leg. He hobbled for a few steps before falling onto a grassy lawn near the top of the hill. Rolling onto his back, he groaned and held his knee. I ran up to him and knelt beside him. What hurts? What happened? My hamstring, he said, grabbing the back of his leg. Okay, take a deep breath in. I breathed in. Now let it out. I blew the air out to indicate what he should do. After I saw Luke wince and try to breathe, I gave him the next directions. Now try to stretch out the leg just a little. Ow, ow, it still hurts, he moaned. He squinted into the sun. I held his foot and started gently pressing on the leg he was holding. He started to straighten the leg a little more. Then his head and shoulders fell back, becoming a little more relaxed. There, let me just rub a little more. I continued to rub Luke's hamstring, watching his eyes close due to the sun. That's much better, he said. He began to look relaxed, lying back with his eyes closed, as if he was getting a massage. Now let's slowly pull the leg in and out, I calmly instructed, having Luke gently press his leg into my hand and pull it back into his chest. Ooh, still hurts there. He indicated a spot. I started to rub the spot with my thumbs until Luke's face relaxed again. As I leaned over, my body blocked the sun, and Luke opened his eyes. My face was inches from Luke's as I rubbed his leg. Don't stop, he said. That feels so nice. He looked in my eyes. For a moment, looking into Luke's gaze, my heart skipped a beat. I felt satisfaction at being able to make Luke feel better, and his stare made me feel like the luckiest girl on earth. I got so caught up in looking at Luke, I forgot what I was doing and lost my balance, falling forward a little. My face almost came crashing down on Luke's until I caught myself with my other hand landing on Luke's chest. It was as solid as a diamond. Sorry, I said as I pushed myself up. Luke put his leg down and sat up, nearly meeting my face with his own. It's okay. He continued to look in my eyes. You've got great hands, Stella. I wanted to tell him all I could do with my hands. How if he wanted, my hands could touch everywhere on his body, not just his hamstring. Yep, I said instead. I thought Luke might kiss me in that moment, both of us looking at each other, our lips only a few inches apart. I guess those man hands are as strong as your biceps, aren't they, boss? Luke stood up, the moment lost. The magic bubble once again popped by Luke's teasing comments. Keep it professional, I told myself. But I couldn't stop thinking about that near kiss, about Luke's lips inches from my own. There was no mistaking it that time. I felt the electricity between us, first as I healed Luke's leg and then when we came face to face. I offered to let Luke lean on me and limp home. Instead he said he'd call for a ride, texting someone on his phone. We sat on the curb and waited. What were you singing earlier? I asked. Oh, just a song from a new Broadway musical. You like musicals? I asked, surprised. I may have big muscles, but I'm a softie at heart. I like musicals too. My roommate Michelle is a good singer. I used to watch her in school productions. The minutes passed by quickly as I got to know Luke and his softer side. I didn't just enjoy looking at Luke, I enjoyed getting to know him better. At least until a black Mercedes pulled up alongside us. As the tinted window slid down, I could see the driver, and I wasn't. Chapter 10. The other woman. The driver of the Mercedes was none other than Gina D'Angelo, a staple of the Hollywood celebrity scene. I couldn't tell you what movies or TV shows she'd appeared in. She wasn't much of an actress. Instead, she seemed to be famous more for whom she was seen with and what she was wearing. I'd seen pictures of Luke at some clubs and restaurants, although never with Gina. And although the tabloids sometimes tried to link Luke to other starlets, it didn't seem he dated any of them long term. I knew he'd had a high school sweetheart who broke his heart, but beyond that, hadn't been linked to anyone seriously, especially anyone as frivolous and fame-hungry as Gina. Luke limped up to the car and leaned on the passenger side window. Thanks for the ride. He smiled at Gina, which made the hair on my neck stand up. He opened the door and looked back. Come on, Stella. Want a ride? For the second time that day, my instincts kicked in.
No.
You go ahead, I said. Be sure to rest and stretch. Ice 15 minutes on, 15 minutes off. Will do. Are you sure you don't want a ride? Gina here won't bite. Luke nodded toward Gina. But I do have claws, she said, brandishing a manicured hand with finely painted designs on each nail. Her slender fingers looked like they'd never washed a dish. They were the opposite of man hands. I know the way back. I want to finish the run, I explained. Okay, boss. He turned to Gina. Stella here is tough. He got in the car and they drove away. I ran back to Luke's house where I saw Gina's Mercedes already parked out front. While I didn't really want to see them together, I knew I should be professional and check on Luke. I walked up to the door and rang the bell. Gina answered, looking ravishing in a modern white jumpsuit, perfectly accessorized with gold jewelry. I, on the other hand, looked more like a sweaty mess with hairs peeking out of my ponytail, my shirt wet and sticking to my body. I just wanted to check on Luke. Make sure he's okay, I said. She let me in and I headed over to Luke, who was lying on the couch. I'm good, Luke said. I'm icing like you said, boss. Gina smiled a satisfactory grin. Anything else? She asked. I'll make sure he's a good patient. She patted his head and threw him a seductive smile. No, there wasn't anything else I could do. Luke just needed rest, and it seemed he had someone to play nurse, so I took that as my cue to leave. I was peeved about the sudden appearance of Gina D'Angelo, especially after my near kiss with Luke. I ran back to my car, furious and dejected. I drove over to Sunset Fitness Club to talk to Daniel. Now that Luke injured his leg, I needed to rethink our workout plan. I found Daniel at the squat rack and I went over to talk to him. In between sets, I relayed my story. What do you expect, Stella? The way my cousin said my name didn't sound nearly as smooth as the way Luke said it. I know, I said. I'm keeping it professional. It's just that. I helped him rack the bar, although he managed pretty well already, even with the cast. I don't want to hear any more about the fire in your loins for Luke. Stella, this is good news. Luke can recommend us to other celebrities like Gina. He picked up a dumbbell in his good arm. No, people like Gina don't work out. They're just naturally thin. That bitch. I shook my head in mock disgust. Maybe not Gina, but Luke knows other celebs and Katie manages a few. I know. I made a fist. I really didn't know what I wanted more, to keep the job so Daniel and I could at least afford cable or eat ramen noodles for a year and date Luke Mulligan. It really was a toss-up. What wasn't fair is that Luke would probably buy me a few dinners if we were dating, and Daniel would be left out. Of course Daniel wanted me to keep the gig. Looking at him struggle to pick up a dumbbell in his other hand, I knew I had to put my personal feelings aside and complete the job. Tinseltown could be particularly unfriendly to those without money and classic good looks. So what do you think I should do about this swimming dilemma? I asked him. I worked out a plan with Daniel and headed home for some rest. My days with Luke were physically exhausting, not to mention the emotional roller coaster. And now with the appearance of a lithe starlet, my confidence had been shaken. Later that evening Michelle found me in our tiny kitchen choking down a salad for dinner. All we had was some lettuce and a red bell pepper. Plus we had run out of my favorite vinaigrette, so while I tried to make my own, it tasted more like a spicy garlic paste than a zesty salad dressing. I don't know why you do this to yourself, Michelle said as she watched me take a bite and crinkle my nose in disgust. She looked in the fridge and grabbed a cheese stick. I can't afford fancy food. It's this with a can of tuna. I indicated the open tin beside my bowl. Stella, you look great. Ryan probably wouldn't even recognize you. She nibbled the end of her cheese. This isn't about Ryan, I said. It's about Luke. I took another bite. And his stick-figure girlfriend, I said with my mouth full. I didn't think Luke had a girlfriend. How'd he keep it a secret from the tabloids? She took another bite. I shrugged and swallowed. It's Gina D'Angelo. Gina D'Angelo? Michelle repeated. That media whore? What's he doing with her? She leaned against the kitchen counter. I mean, she's beautiful and all, but vapid. I thought Luke had more brains than that. Me too. I put my fork down, now thoroughly disgusted with the salad. But she picked him up today in her shiny Mercedes. I felt like such a fool. I put my head in my hands. Okay, so she picked him up? So what? Michelle came over to my bowl, picked up my fork and took a bite. She coughed and spit out her mouthful. That's disgusting, she said, pointing to the bowl. I know. So what happened? We were running and Luke got this cramp in his leg. He fell over and I started rubbing his hamstring. Then I accidentally fell on top of him. He sat up, and we almost kissed. I stared off, thinking about Luke's beautiful full lips just inches from mine. You know he likes show tunes? He's adorable when he tries to sing. If he's singing in front of you, that means he's comfortable with you. This is starting to sound more like he's into you than this Gina chick. Gina took another bite of her cheese stick. But then he said I have man hands. I raised my hands, turning them this way and that. She laughed and again coughed out her food. Really? That's what he said. She raised her eyebrows. Ugh, it was because I rubbed out his cramp. I just thought he was, interested for a moment. I shook my head in disgust. I got it wrong because as soon as he was okay, he texted his wafer-thin friend Gina to come pick him up. This guy, Michelle said. Reeling you in. She mimicked holding a fishing rod and pulling herself closer to me. and throwing you back out. She cast the make-believe rod with her arms. Right now I'm out. Gina's in. And if that's the kind of girl he's into, I'll never have a chance. She's thin and beautiful and famous. Ah, but she doesn't have something you have. She waved the last bit of cheese stick in my face. What's that? I asked, giving her my best pouty face. Your tenacity. I shrugged at her answer. He hired you to swim, didn't he? No one else has the perseverance you do. That's another thing. We're going to have to start swimming, and I can't let Luke see me in a bathing suit. Not now that I know he's into the Gina D'Angelo body type. I sat back and crossed my arms. Stella, Michelle stared at me. Sexy is a mindset. I rolled my eyes at her like I did at Daniel. In some regards they were both right. I took the job so I could teach Luke how to swim. I needed to stop focusing on my ego and rise to the challenge. At the very least you'll look better than you did in a wet country club uniform. And that gave me an idea. I might not be able to avoid Luke seeing me in the pool, but I sure could avoid letting him get a good look. Being in the pool where I was dominant and he was the weakling was the perfect place to stage my Chapter 11 in Too Deep. In order to make it look like I wasn't bothered by the fact that Luke called Gina to pick him up the previous day, I arrived at Luke's with a wide smile. We had made plans to train before Gina had shown up the day before, so I knew Luke would be ready. Like many Louisiana days, the sun was shining and there was little breeze. Luke welcomed me in while munching on a bagel. What's on tap today, boss? I think we finally need to hit the pool, start? He put up his hand to stop me. You don't have to say it. Well, after the hamstring, it will be better to get in the water and... My hamstring's fine, he said between bites. We'll see about that. Katie hired my cousin to teach you how to swim, so I'm going to teach you how to swim. I looked straight in his eyes. Are you up for it? Sure, just let me finish this bagel first. He popped the remaining bite in his mouth. And get changed. The pool's that way. He indicated a direction toward the back of the house. I waited until Luke walked away and hurried down the hallway. Once I turned the corner I could see a sunny blue shimmer outside a bank of 2-story windows. The room looked like the conservatory from Clue with pots of green plants, and a floor covered in black and white tiles. One wall featured glass windows and a large glass door leading to the manicured pool area. You would have thought I had learned when my first pool plan went wrong at the country club that I should give up making secret pool plans. I hadn't. Before Luke could get back from changing, I pumped up an inflatable pool raft with a battery-operated pump I'd brought. I still had the pump from the early days in our apartment when I used to sleep on an air mattress. Then I took off my shirt and shorts and left them crumpled in a pile by my bag. As soon as Luke came back, I held the inflatable up in front of my body. Luke strolled in and opened the glass doors, letting in a chilly waft of air from the outside. I followed him holding the raft. When he got to the edge of the pool, Luke took off his shirt. His pecs glistened in the sunlight. Despite the love handles, his abs were fairly chiseled and his back appeared sweeping and sexy. I quickly inched in the deep end, covering my body in little ripples, the raft in front of me before Luke could focus his gaze. Once in the water, my nervousness subsided. I was pretty sure Luke hadn't gotten a good look at my figure, and in the water I felt comfortable. The water was warm, not quite bath water, but not cold enough to make my nipples hard. So what's first, boss? He asked. I squinted up at him, using one hat to shield the sun from my eyes. Why don't you get in and hold on to the wall? I said. I don't like the deep end. He looked slightly disgusted. Oh, it can't be that bad.
Come in.
I was treading water with my legs and holding onto the raft. Luke sat on the pool deck, his feet dangling in the water. He slowly lowered the rest of his body in and held on the wall. His face appeared tight, his cheeks squeezed in as he struggled to even kick his legs. I could see Luke was uncomfortable. My initial reaction was to console him. At the same time, I was hesitant to let go of the raft. I inched closer to him and once I almost reached the wall, I shoved the raft away. I held onto the wall next to Luke and demonstrated kicking. Luke quickly caught on. Next, I encouraged him to do the same, just putting his head in the water, blowing bubbles and popping up to breathe. The first time he tried, he kept his face in for about a second before pulling his head up and gasping for breath. His legs fell against the wall, losing their buoyancy. Here, let me help. I grabbed his legs and held them up, alternating kicks while he put his face in the water and took breaths. He didn't resist my grasp as we worked together to push his legs up and down in the water. There, I said. You're getting it. I had pretty much forgotten about my body issues, primarily because Luke's vision was skewed thanks to the pool water trickling in his eyes, and also because most of my body was concealed underwater. He smiled, his wet tousled hair adding to his charm. "This is child's play," he said. "I think I've got it now." He plunged his head in, blowing bubbles like I taught him. I continued to bob around the raft nearby, watching Luke and his big grin of achievement when he brought his head up. His confidence grew as he kept his head underwater for longer and longer stretches. With his confidence brimming, Luke looked up at me and splashed a little water in my face. "What was that for?" I asked. "Oh, just having a little," he said. I splashed him back before he could finish and laughed. "Is that how it's going to be?" He splashed me harder. "I don't think you'll win this one," I said and swam away on my back, waving at him on the wall, taunting him, knowing he couldn't catch me. I grabbed the raft and started kicking with it back toward Luke. I guess because he had become so comfortable in the water so quickly, he thought he could challenge himself a little more. Or maybe it was the fact that we were actually quite competitive with each other, I'm not sure. But that's when it all went wrong, and I wished I'd never brought that stupid raft in the first